I'm going to go one by one here, and you could tell me who you think the leading candidate is.
What time
Seriously.
do we have?
No, seriously.
Oh, I thought you meant the Jets. I was going to say that
No.
one.
Well, I mean, we'll get to them in a
Okay,
second.
sure.
I'll circle back to them, but I want to go alphabetical order in terms of jobs that are open right now and who you think is the leading candidate or who is the target that this organization would love to have over anyone else. And I go with the Chicago Bears first, Tom. Who's that?
Certainly believe, and I've said it for months, Rich, here and elsewhere, Ben Johnson, it's a job that intrigues him. I believe that he is at or near the top of their list. I think that that's a realistic possibility. I also think the way they proceeded with Mike McCarthy tells you that that's viewed as a really real candidate for them as well. You know, they fly him and his wife up to check it out. They spent basically the whole day with him, went to dinner with him. It seemed like on paper more of a recruiting meeting than it was an interview, which makes sense when, you know, that guy's beaten you like 19 times. You got a pretty good idea of what his resume is. I mean, Mike McCarthy gets kicked around in some circles, but he's made the playoffs 12 times in the past 18 seasons as a head coach. The Bears in that span have made it 4 times. It's a really accomplished coach. They've also interviewed a ton of people, Rich. They're still doing interviews here, but I believe both those guys are real candidates. And certainly, you know, if Ben wants to go there, I think that's going to be a real consideration.
What about waiting for Marcus Freeman by the end of Monday night? Is that real?
I brought that up on game day morning last week. You know, you got to get past this game. I think that there was at least a possibility if Notre Dame had lost last weekend, that Marcus Freeman might have interviewed this week. It's always been, you know, something that people who know Marcus Freeman well say there's an interest level with him. I mean, he could win the national title Monday night, Rich, and basically have a contract for life at one of the iconic programs in all of college football. You win the national title. What else is there to do? I get the pressure every year of trying to, you know, go and win another one. The Bears are one of the iconic franchises in the NFL. They drafted Marcus Freeman as a linebacker back in 2009, never played in an NFL game. Maybe he gets the opportunity to coach one. I would not completely rule that out just yet.
All right, so let's move, even though it's not alphabetically in order. I want to save the big one for last. Jacksonville. Who is Jacksonville's target of choice that you think stands out?
Jacksonville's done, you know, a half dozen interviews so far. Ben Johnson is definitely someone who is still in play for that job as well. I know there were people within the league who thought that was going to be the job that Ben Johnson would target. I'm not there right now. I'm not ruling it out, but I would not say, you know, right now Jacksonville is clearly number one for Ben Johnson. I do know that, you know, they loved Robert Saleh in that building when he was an assistant. He interviewed in person for the job. I would not rule him out as a possibility. You know, they've talked to a variety of other people. They talked to Liam Cohen. They talked to Patrick Graham. That one still is a fluid process, I would say, at this point, Rich, which makes sense. You know, the way that Shad Khan has operated coaching searches in the past, he's going to take his time here. But certainly Ben and Saleh are two names that I would keep in mind.
All right. What about New Orleans? Who's the favored candidate there for the Saints full-time gig?
There are definitely people who believe Aaron Glenn is the one. You know, he was the runner-up to Dennis Allen a couple of years ago, and I think that if Dennis Allen hadn't been the guy who stayed and hadn't been sort of the handpicked successor for Sean Payton, maybe Aaron Glenn would have gotten the job at that time. I know this. Aaron Glenn loves that city. He still has relationships with some of the older players on that roster. He knows that building. He's worked with Mickey Loomis. It would make sense if that's the job that Aaron Glenn wants, but he might have multiple opportunities. I would also not rule out Mike McCarthy for that job. I believe that he will interview for that job sometime maybe the middle of next week. He worked with Mickey Loomis when he was the offensive coordinator 20 years ago, and Mickey was a young administrator who took over as the GM. There's a mutual respect between those two. Joe Brady's also talking to them here. But I would say Aaron Glenn, Mike McCarthy are two of the names to watch in New Orleans.
All right, now let's move to the Jets. Again, 17 names of people they interviewed. Does that include Vrabel, or you took him off that list since he's already taken a job?
No, Vrabel was the second one. We listed all of them there.
All right, so who do you think, again, that the Jets, out of all the people that they are turning these stones over? What do you think?
It's hard to get a read on the Jets, not just because of the volume of interviews, Rich, but also there's a lot of people involved in these interviews. Of course, Rick Spielman, Mike Tannenbaum are doing a lot of the football conversation, asking the football questions, but Woody is there for all of it. There's ultimately one guy who's going to make this decision. Everybody else is going to give input, but it's got to be who is Woody most comfortable with. I do believe that Aaron Glenn is a real candidate for that job. again, we have to see if he's got multiple opportunities. Does he want to go to New Orleans? Does he want to go to the Jets? Does somebody else, maybe even Jacksonville, make him an offer? That's a possibility there. But I can't rule out really, most of the guys that they've interviewed here, Rich. I can't even sit here and rule out 100% Rex Ryan just because, his case is pretty straightforward, which is, hey, the glory years 15 years ago. Remember that? That was fun. Everybody loved us then, Woody. It hasn't gone so great since I was out of here. Bring me back. Give me a shot. I don't believe that that's going to be the hire, but I can't rule it out because, again, ultimately one person is going to make this choice, and it's Woody Johnson, who, is at a stage in his life where he wants to figure this thing out. He tried a lot of things last year. He pushed buttons, whether they were the right ones or the wrong ones. He asked a ton of questions, which is his right as the owner. Rex is used to it. He knows that he can work and has won with Woody here. Again, I'm probably talking too much about Rex Ryan, but I can't rule out a whole lot of people for that job at this point, Rich. We'll get a better feel for that when they start cutting that thing down next week.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.